Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.
As humanity has been on the path of embracing diversity, one last minority is still unrecognized. Experiencers. These are the contactees, abductees, eyewitnesses, and researchers of the UFO phenomenon, paradimensional realms, and contact with other intelligences. Could it be that some protocol, some map, has been created by our visitors to integrate humanity into Paradigm Galactic? Could this be the experiencer path to disclosure? Welcome to Aquarian Radio, Friday night, with Janet Kira Lesson, Karen Christine Patrick, and the Reverend John Polk, and guests on the experiencer path. Hello, welcome everybody to Aquarian Radio, the Experiencer Path, Friday night. My name is Karen Christine Patrick. I'm coming to you from the high mesa of New Mexico, where it's really warm and beautiful. I hope it's nice where you guys are at, wherever you are. On this show, I also have with me Janet Kira Lesson and the Reverend John Polk. And Janet, would you like to say hi to everyone from Hawaii?
Okay. I got to unmute myself. Yes, hello, everybody. Broadcasting to you live from Maui, Hawaii. It's a beautiful day here. They said it's going to rain at 11. It's 2 o'clock and no rain. Yay. But very excited about this show today with Laura. And you'll be introducing Laura with a little bio information on her. But Laura is a good friend of ours. My husband and I have known Laura for years and done other shows with her. And we're excited to get the update, what's going on, and what her life's about, and what's new in her research. So back to you, Karen.
Thank you, Janet. And we'd also like to say hello to co-host the Reverend John Polk down in Florida. How's it going, John?
Everything's going really good. Looking forward to Contact in the Desert, where I know Laura is going to be one of the speakers. And we were just talking about that off air. And look forward to it. I've been studying her this afternoon and look forward to asking her some questions.
Oh, fantastic. I titled this show Run to the Edge, and that came out of a conversation I had earlier this week where talking about researchers often when we go on shows or write books, we're a few years back, we're a few steps back from what we're interested in right now, so, to catch people up. But tonight we're going to try to run to the edge. So everyone, including our guest, Laura Eisenhower, we're going to that edge of what's happening right now, what's on our mind right now, what are we seeing, what are we interested, and we have a sophisticated, experiencer audience with us, so I'm sure that they will be able to keep up. We've got the smartest audience on the planet. So I'd like to introduce Laura Eisenhower by way of reading a bit of a write-up about her, because I could write pages and pages. She's really got a lot going on. I feel privileged to have met her quite a few years ago in Washington State at the Life on Mars conference with Andrew Bishago and Alfred Labermont-Weber. I still have my notebook with my pages and pages, and I got hand cramp writing notes. I learned so much. It was brand new material at the time, and of course, many more revelations have happened since that time about what's going on Mars. So let me go ahead and read this. For experiencers, we often have two aspects in a bit of a competition with each other internally when communicating with others about what is going on in our lives. Most of us have to go back a few squares of the game to earlier years in order to catch people up. Yeah, we have our own edge, often, that place where our energies are caught up to the present moment. Today, we want to have a show from the edge of our observations and with our guests, trusting our audience is capable of keeping up quite adequately. Laura Eisenhower is famously the great-granddaughter of World War II General and the 34th President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Her family is one of the great exemplary American families with a history of public service and private philanthropy. Laura is an icon, all on her own terms. She has been very vocal as a planetary whistleblower, revealing the hidden hand that is in world events. She's been a primary voice revealing aspects of the secret space program, a clandestine base on Mars, as she was being recruited to join this base and colony on the Red Planet. A gifted psychic, she gives readings for her many clients and embodies the expansive spirit of Mother Earth. She is in tune with the planetary energies and has a unique perspective on what is happening today globally. She speaks with a voice of authenticity and hope that humanity has a positive future. Welcome to Aquarian Radio, Friday night. Experience Your Path, Laura Eisenhower. Thank you for coming. Hello. Are you there, Laura?
Hello. I'm here. Thank you so much. Hi.
Oh, I'm glad you decided to jump into the room here. That's fantastic. Thank you for coming with us.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine. That was good in case we cough or sneeze or the dog barks. It's great. What we'd like to have you do is go ahead and introduce yourself. Give yourself, 10 minutes or so to add anything that was missing from your introduction and anything you want to. And then typically we just go round robin through the panel here to make comments and ask questions. So go ahead, Laura.
Well, I appreciate the intro. Thank you so much for having me. I just love all that you're doing. We've definitely been connecting over the years, and, it just takes just this unity consciousness and our willingness to listen to each other and create these conversations and have an open mind and not, be pushing an agenda too much. And that's what I've really learned, that we can have our own personal agenda for our personal sovereignty, and we can recognize, other groups and tribes and appreciate, where they're coming from. But we got to remember, our place, and to not lose ourselves to some of that. So I would say, just to add to what you already said, I'm a researcher. I'm an experiencer. My background's in wilderness expedition leadership. I do sessions. I help people to understand some of the challenges that they may be faced with as move into these ascension energies. We've been in this window for a while, though, and people may notice it hasn't maybe been moving as quickly as we expected. But, there's a lot about my research with the divine feminine and the goddess and Gaia and how that relates to Chiron, the wounded healer, and just the path of rehabilitation and just really coming together. And without that authenticity or transparency, it can get in the way, because we don't need to pretend to be anything but where we are in this process. And the more we can support one another, the better. I am working on a book, and I just I'm learning just so much every day, and I'm just grateful. Even today, I was like, you know what? I'm actually maybe finally okay with being human. Say that maybe right on the cusp of when we're ready to move into the crystalline energies from carbon-based. But that's really where I feel my role is to help people with nutritional support and support with understanding, ancestral patternings and past lives, and just, really getting to know who you are so that you can recognize that you are the shift in this ascension.
Well, that's fantastic. I will go ahead and let Janet start with the first question and comment, and like I said, we'll just go round robin after that. Go ahead, Janet.
Okay. Laura, we're going to be seeing each other at Contact in the Desert, which is coming up May, let me get the dates, May 19th, 20th, and 21st, and 22nd will be post-conference workshops in Joshua Tree, contactinthedesert.com, and Joshua Tree is in California. And so what are you going to talk about at the conference? Are you doing any panels? Are you doing workshops? Tell us what you're doing there and what are your topics. What are you going to cover?
Yes, I'll be doing a panel, which is from it's 7 to 9. I believe it's on a Saturday. Check out the website and click onto my name. You'll see information about my lecture and my workshop and the time of the panel and everything like that. But yeah, I'm my specialty really is talking about this initiation process into the Hyros Gamos and Sacred Union, and how that is, what DNA upgrades are all about. This links to the Earth grids, it links to our galactic chakras and our galactic history, and a lot of the different agendas that have been impacting us from behind the scenes have tried to sort of stunt this. So I like to sort of shed light on this ascension process and sort of bring a simplicity to it while also looking at maybe some of the complexities that maybe feel like it goes over our head. Because when we look at all of it, it is a lot more simple than we think. When we can relate it to a love story. What's amazing is, the DNA holds, the elementals, and our soul energy does as well. And we're really returning to the knowledge of what alchemy is, and sacred geometries, and, getting ourselves in alignment to, help to correct some of the reversals and some of the scrambling of these fire codes and DNA sequences that, should be coming in smoothly if we weren't dealing with interference and things like artificial intelligence.
And that's a very interesting topic that I've been talking about with many different researchers on the Internet on various shows is AI. What do you think is going on with artificial intelligence? Some people think that the singularity has already happened, and some say it's going to happen, between now and 2045 is what Ray Kurzweil said. What do you think is going on with artificial intelligence, and how far are they along in the so-called assimilation program, the boarding of humanity?
Well, I almost think that we're, as individuals on different places on the timeline, but we might be on the same timeline, right? I think the only real true timeline is the positive timeline, and everything else sort of helps to reroute us there, or, teaches us something that helps to remind us of the fact that it's a resource that's always there, similar to the immune system. I mean, we can be blocked from it to a certain degree. We can, let us stray away from it and maybe be compromised to a certain degree as well. But, it's there, and it's there for us. Artificial intelligence, I mean, the thing is with technology, not all of it's bad. And, I think this is an era where we maybe map out what serves us as a humanity and what might not. Similar to extraterrestrial races, without creating a judgment on a whole race, because not, the whole of any race is purely negative. But when we look at different ET races, some are service to self and some are service to others, just like humans, and some, are connected in with the military-industrial complex, and some are really here to help us to be sovereign beings. When we look at artificial intelligence and we see the application of it for, health benefits or things that, can really, help us, to progress in places that digress, it does look like there's, a lot that's hopeful, but there's a bit of a trap with some of the artificial intelligence, or maybe even all of it. So I just think it's really good that we all kind of step back and ask all the right questions and look at, the work of people like Corey Goode, who says things like this, and question it, and step back and kind of hold it at arm's length and ask, questions that will, help you to feel like you're empowered in these times. I think, technology is going to be helpful, but we have to recognize that we're the advanced technology, and we're going through all sorts of things, and personally, and, as a collective, and I think we're really going to start to notice that, we have so much that's available to us on an organic level. And there's a choice between the organic ascension signals and the artificial intelligence signals. And I think, it's just important for us to understand the difference between the two. And the thing is, when we're conscious, like when we're in a relationship and we're conscious, we can create breakthroughs. It's not all about good and bad. We're moving out of that paradigm of duality if we want to. So I think, it's a time of really understanding, how we can progress and develop without having the technology stunt our growth, and also progress and develop without, being too vulnerable to beings out there that might act as tricksters. So, this is why unity consciousness is important, because the more we have each other's back and the more we hold that love and respect for each other, the more we'll thrive on a personal level, and that oneness can really happen, because really, to me, oneness is diversity and harmony. We don't all have to agree, but we need to hold that mutual respect and love.
Yeah, I love it. I've been watching the works of the Hanson Robotics, and they have they have a lot of incredible robots, but they have two that are super incredible. One is Sophia, which is interesting. They use the name Sophia. The other is Jules, and I recommend you go and take some time and watch those YouTubes. So AI is way beyond where we can even begin to imagine. These robots contemplate existence, talk about God, love. They express love, and it just makes you wonder. It makes me think of Data. Remember Data from Star Trek, and how he always wanted to be more human and fall in love and experience what it was like to be human. So with that, I'm going to pass the talking stick. We have an invisible talking stick on to John. John, are you there?
I am.
Okay.
So
I mute the noise. Okay.
Okay. Anyway, I was going through some of the older episodes, actually not even older episodes, but I guess last season of Ancient Aliens. And Laura was on one of those episodes called The Mysterious Nine, which was about the Aeneid. And it was an incredible story, an incredible episode of Ancient Aliens. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But she more specifically talked about Valiant Thor and his visit to the White House, where he achieved VIP status for 3 years, going back to March 16th, 1957. And it's funny, because if you tell the story of Valiant Thor, a lot of people do not believe it. But there's so many witnesses that actually witnessed Valiant Thor and interacted with Valiant Thor, including your great-grandfather, Joint Chiefs of Staff, military leaders, etc. Can you tell us who some of those actual witnesses were, and what else you know about Valiant Thor?
Witnesses, with Valiant Thor, that's a good question. Well, I mean, I would say just Eisenhower and Nixon. I mean, both of them were kind of witnesses to each other, and everything that went down was more about the opposition versus, what we hear about is more about, the opposition, what the Joint Chiefs of Staff had to say. And somehow, this veto, I don't even know why they use the word veto. From what I come to understand about government, the structure of government and the way it's unfolded over the years, it's incredibly confusing to me. I can never pass any kind of citizenship test something is just a little bit off. But, you know, as far as witnesses go, I think, you know, somebody like Anonymous, you know, is a really good go-to person. You know, we often find that the people that have something to say are on their deathbed. Anonymous, though, was more of a witness to Eisenhower wanting to invade Area 51, but there was some sort of connecting point, though, that I sort of picked up on with him and Valiant Thor. I might be wrong. There's a lot of whistleblower testimony connected to that initial Grenada Treaty, and the thing with that is it was more of a surrender by the time it came into the Eisenhower administration, and there's just a lot about that isn't what it appears to be, connected to the NSA and different units of the NSA. So when we look at something, you know, like Valiant Thor and some of the stuff that's been written up, you know, Frank Strange's, I mean, he's kind of the ultimate because he wrote the books, Stranger at the Pentagon. And then you know, just have like the people that he mentioned in the book that were, you know, witness to it that I don't have memorized as names. But Frank Strange's, if anybody were to Google, and when the movie comes out, because the movie's coming out, it's based on, you know, his book. I would say, you know, that's the ultimate, you know, witness, you know, besides, you know, just Eisenhower and Nixon themselves. You know, the other ones that wanted to shut it down, of course, they're not really going to say anything about it because that's part of, you know, the agenda of secrecy. But, you know, if you do your research and you really look into these books and you read these books, you'll find that, you know, there's a lot of that. There's some names that I can't even pronounce that I know were a part of all this. Vanderham or Vander, it's actually a really good friend. She came to a conference that I was speaking at, and Valiant Thor has been her spirit guide since she was a kid. And she was told that Valiant Thor and Eisenhower are still working together, and so she's a very strong channel for this. And her father worked in that era, and is actually, like, there's a chapter in the book, Stranger at the Pentagon, that's all about him and his role. And I know his daughter very well. And I believe it's Vanderham is the last name.
Also, Harley Byrd, who is related to Admiral Byrd, he backed him up also. And then shortly thereafter, he started to run Project Blue Book, which I thought was interesting also. But a follow-up question. Since Valiant Thor was sent, who sent him? Was it the Aeneid? Was it a divine council? Based on your research and just what you know, who do you think actually sent Valiant Thor, and for what reason?
Well, from what I've gathered, it's a higher council of Christ-conscious beings. It's a Venus energy. I mean, they came in, or they came to us from the inner planet of Venus, and their ships are still stationed. Even though we weren't able to agree with their offer, they are still with us. I mean, they're still here. I would definitely say, because of a lot of what they've communicated connected to the Christ energy, that it's a, you know, council connected to, I mean, if we look at the Orion Wars and we look at, like, Sananda and, you know, the Essenes and just what they were relating to and helping with, I'm seeing them sort of a part of all of that, but in a sort of more like, let's, you know, guide humanity into the future sort of part of the timeline. You know, because if we look at it, I mean, we have parts of ourselves all over the place. You know, alternate timelines. You know, we hold energies of benevolent, higher extraterrestrial energies. You know, we have access to embody Christ consciousness and avatar consciousness. And I would say that they are the higher levels of DNA embodied avatar beings. But they, from what, you know, the information shows, are beings from Venus and are sharing teachings of Christ. You know, the real teachings, not the religious distorted version.
Okay, that's consistent with what I've been reading also. So I'll pass it back to Karen.
Thank you, John. Yeah, well, on this theme of going right to the edge, I'll mention the topic that was the topic of the week to a lot of people I was around this week, and that is Mercury in retrograde. Going along with, it's funny how when you're going to Facebook, it's like a snapshot of where everybody's at, as a group. And a lot of people really on the edge saying they want to throw in the towel. They're just really frustrated. I know that you are you have a lot of background in astrology and those kinds of, what do these things mean, Mercury and retrograde and all. What is your observation of what's going on right now and then maybe what's happening in the near future?
Okay. I'm about to do an astro report, so I'm not completely filled with all the aspects. But there are a lot of planets in retrograde, and it really just represents a time to go inward. For some people, it's a time of, great contemplation and breakthroughs, and for other people, it's very uncomfortable because it doesn't feel like, you're able to create on a very active level without something kind of falling apart. We hear a lot about, communications breaking down. As far as what's, coming in, Venus is getting out of retrograde. I think it just did. And it's funny you ask because I'm just about to do my astro report tonight, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have not really been able to check in much because I've just been dealing with so much. It's just like, it's amazing that I just can't seem to find the time to just, do this, because of kids and just events and, but yeah, no, retrogrades are great. Any kind of communication breakdown, anytime anything in the external world isn't really happening, or if you feel kind of lost and you don't know what your next steps are, use this as a time to really go into your imagination and go into your creativity and, make sure that your creative channels are flowing with instructions that you're in agreement to instead of things that you're either afraid of or things that other people project. It's just really important to take the time to do that work. We came out of a Saturn square Neptune. I believe it's over. I hope it is. It's pretty rough. Saturn and Neptune are very different planets, and squared aspects mean a friction, or some sort of challenge. Saturn has a lot to do with discipline, responsibility, and practicality, and even, just, things related to health and just kind of those reality checks. Whereas Neptune's all about multidimensional reality and our capacity to dream beyond the matrix. So you put the two together, and it just shows, how we're all challenged in integrating these multidimensional energies into our physical body and into, our physical lives, by learning to walk the talk and learning to say goodbye to relationships that don't serve us. There's, just the outer planets. They're going to continue to give us activations. We moved out of that Uranus-Pluto square. That kicked a lot of people's butts for the better. But, what's to come is, I think there's just a lot of liberation from just even the zodiac because we moved into the 13th sign, and the 13th sign very much represents our connection to the neutron window and reconnecting to Andromeda and that reconnection of Milky Way and Andromeda, which symbolically sort of represents that sacred union that we're experiencing on an individual level. So that micro-macro connection is really accelerating in the year ahead.
Oh, thank you. That's excellent. And I'm going to ask a little bit more technical question on the AI thing because that's going to be one of the things I'm going to be talking about in a future talk about AI and kind of where it's really coming from and what our choice is as humans. But I'll go ahead and give the visible talking stick to Janet. Go ahead, Janet. Oh, Janet. Okay, I might have to ask my question if I can't get her back on. Let's see what we got here. Hang on just a sec. There she is. Oh, great.
Look at the board, Karen. I mute myself. Okay.
Oh, I see that. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, I wanted to address, for me, it's been the best of times and the worst of times the last few years. And sometimes it just sends me reeling. Like October, I spent the last 2 weeks of October in the hospital fighting for my life. And I hear so many friends are having those type of stories. Like, it just catches you off guard. There was a story today of a country singer, and she woke up with a brown recluse bit her on the face. But you can't, it's like you never know what's going to happen. You never know when a brown recluse is going to bite you in the face and you're in a hospital fighting for your life. And it makes me just wonder, when I was sitting there wondering if that's going to be, they're going to find the cure for this infection that was taking over my body. And I know you've had some similar struggles, and it just makes you contemplate life and existence and reality and what's it all about. So I'm not sure where I'm going. If I have a question, let me just keep talking for a moment here. But I was just struck by what you said and what's been going on for myself. I, like yourself, Laura and Karen, I'm kind of like in the middle of a wheel or a hub, and I have a whole circle of friends, and we're all connected on the Internet, and it feels like we're alone. At the same time, we're part of this huge global community, and we're going through the most interesting times in existence. And we wake up, I know there's always been talks of wars and rumors of wars and the end of days and the extension and, higher levels of consciousness, but it seems like everything is accelerated, like life is on high speed. It's almost like life is on acid. Are you observing that kind of thing? And then in the bottom of all this, I have this divine sacred relationship. I've spent most of my life, this is my third marriage and a couple other relationships, like pursuing this divine partnership. So I have this incredible beloved, and then I look at life and I go, oh my God, this man that I love so much is going to be 77 years old on his 6th birthday. And I go, wow, here we're in this reality where, any moment it could be the end of both of us, because we have this concept of old age, and when you get a certain age, you die. And so I'm trying to disconnect from myself from that belief system, which was so indoctrinated into me since birth that, with the passing of the years, the closer you get to a certain, time, like 80, 90, 100 or something, you're just going to expire. And I know this is the generation that could experience extreme life expectancies, longevity, if not physical immortality. We hear the stories of the 20 and back program, how the secret space program and military have these extended life procedures. And so, anyway, I just want to toss that back into the arena for discussion. So, Laura, do you have any reflections or comments or questions or feedback for what I just said?
Yeah. Oh, wow. There's a lot there. Are you maybe just asking about responding to the madness of it all? Like, in this stage of the game, why all the madness still? Because that's where I'm sort of feeling.
Yeah, it just feels like it's a whole new level of craziness. It's always been kind of crazy. I was born in the 50s, raised in the 60s. When I was born, your grandfather was president. So that's, that was my first experience of a president. My parents literally voted for him. We waved signs saying, I like Ike, and we're the buttons and the pins back in the 50s. I remember this as a young child. So, but there seemed to be, even though it was World War II, there seemed to be a period where we were, you had a foundation, a root chakra, somewhere you could ground yourself. But now it seems like everything's gone out the window, and it's a high level of insanity. And I'm pretty grounded after 20, 30 years of therapy, right? But I'm going, oh, my goodness, how do I stay calm in the middle of this onslaught? And, I'm in the middle, and I get all these calls and all these people in panic. And I know you probably do too, Laura. How do you stay calm, stabilize yourself, or do you get destabilized and then, do you have other people to help you calm down? Because I think we all need each other.
I'm doing the best job at that. I don't know if that's what I've been doing really good at. I know how to hold space for clients. I've been doing astrology for, a couple, I can say 20 years or so. And then the tarot. So I can interpret other people's stuff, but my own stuff and how the targeting or just how my own agreements and how I'm feeling amidst just where the collective's at. I mean, that's stuff that I just got to deal with. And, I try and get out into nature as much as possible, but I certainly have not gotten out enough. But I recommend that to people. I can't begin to tell you how much that saved me. After I went to high school in the D.C. area, I just hit the mountains and lived in the wilderness for like a couple of years, and went to every Native American ruin I could, and just lived on the road for a long time, and just really breathed it all in, and gave myself permission. Who cares what anybody says? And what are they trying to uphold? Figuring out being successful, with a lot of money in my bank because I've mastered some sort of thing that has that might be taking advantage of people's vulnerability. I don't understand that. So, I just encourage people to take the time you need, got some sort of plan, get to know yourself as much as possible, really determine what you can and cannot handle, and just get into a dialogue with yourself. Because if you think about it, you can't really be in a healthy relationship with another person if you can't get into a healthy dialogue. So, writing and creativity is a really great way for us to really engage with ourselves, to understand, where we're at. And I work with clients, to help with, triggers that take place throughout the day, things that are buried in the unconscious, things from past lives, things that come in from, other, off-planet entities and, maybe telepathing with subterranean, cultures and groups or individuals. There's just a lot there. And we all have a unique story, but, we're pulling together into this this greater, bond without having to give up who we really are and who we truly are to ourselves. So, those boundaries are important. So I honor my boundaries. If I'm not up for something, and somebody's trying to push me into it, I've learned to just really respect my limitations and also respect my the part of me that could adventure and just blow it all open and not be limited by anything at all. So it's just learning a greater respect by starting to move out some of those old voices and finding more joy in choosing me, not in a selfish way, but in a way that will help to serve humanity, because I'm choosing my authenticity and I'm choosing to understand, what my body's trying to tell me as it's assisting me in healing or upgrading above the frequency of these lower assaults and things like chemtrails and, GMO, just things that are in our environment that try and take us down a notch. So I just am really enjoying, I guess, not letting that typical stuff get in the way. And it never really did, but I did, I think, carry around stigmas, and I had some self-destructive tendencies. And I think my favorite thing right now is just the willingness to overcome it and engage people on that real deep sort of genuine level. And I just feel so much growth and bonding and I just have so much love and respect for people when we can exist on that level. And if we can't, I feel really passionate about helping to open up a person so they feel safe. So that's kind of where it's at for me right now.
Yeah, I really relate to getting into nature. I actually have created a life where I'm living in the jungle. So I'm surrounded by green and vegetation, and I know you've been to the tropics, and that really helps me just living here. But and then I think one of the practices I don't do enough is grounding, where you literally go and put your feet, in the dirt, in the grass, in the sand, somewhere outside of something artificial, and that tends to help. Well, I've asked enough questions, talked enough. I'm going to pass this on to John. So thank you very much.
And also the herbs and nutritional stuff, really learning about the nature medicine I just wanted to add that. That's also a huge passion. So,
when I was in the hospital, of course, they force these pharmaceuticals, into your veins and down your throat, and I sat there denying it, not rejecting it. I said, no, I don't. They have to honor you, and they can't really force you to a degree. So I said, no, I'm not taking that, and they don't allow me to bring any of my herbal stuff, my vitamins. No, you can't take that. So as part of agreeing to go into the hospital to fight an infection, I had to agree to their protocol, and that's what made me so sick for like 3 months, was recovering from being on mainly antibiotics. And thank God I didn't take any of the pain medications. I have so many clients that are just struggling to get away from the pain medications that they get hooked on because they go in for an injury or something. It's inevitable that you're going to end up with some kind of great intensive pain or injury, and that's how you get addicted. But enough on that, and I do agree about the nutrition. I always look for something natural, and when I'm feeling ill in any way, shape, or form, I'm one of those internet I diagnose on the internet, but I look for natural remedies, and then I study it. Then, of course, I give it to my higher self, and I go, okay, what can I do? And I've actually brought myself and my husband and some friends from the brink of death just by following that. But I always tell them, I'm not it. You need to do your own research and pull it back to yourself, because there's no one that knows you more than yourself and your higher self and your guides and, all those levels of consciousness. Okay, with that, John, how are you? Back to you.
That's so awesome, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that your great-grandfather, after the Great Treaty and after Valiant Thor, he wanted disclosure. He wanted to tell the American people at least a part of what happened, but the Secretary of Defense shot him down, the head of the CIA shot him down, the Joint Chiefs shot it down. He wanted to talk about this with the General Assembly of the UN, and it was all shut down. I would have to assume he was incredibly frustrated by that, but his heart was definitely in the right place, Laura.
Yeah, no, it absolutely was. And it's just funny when you were saying all that, I'm like, God, that sounds like me when I was in, the school system. Like, shut down,
really?
shut down, yeah, I mean, gosh, yeah. I stepped back, for a while, after hearing all these rumors. I didn't want to be biased and just be, having to defend him because I'm related to him. And I didn't really feel called to do that because I'm super rebellious and I'm not really invested in bloodlines anyway. But at the same time, we're human and we feel that protection, with others. If there's a generally, good energy there that we can't maybe put our finger on. And I always felt that with him. And I was like, gosh, what are people saying here? And I'm like, I just not thinking that what is being shared is being shared, but there's a lot more. And everything you just said, I know is where it was at for him. He did want to, disclose. Think about how much rewriting of history or how much somebody can distort a document just to sort of suit, their organization or look at the secret space program with all the layers. God only knows, all the different distortions they put in, with that multi-layer, what do you call it? I don't even know what you call it. It's just huge. It's like an I don't even. So, here he is, and he's witnessing this, and he's recognizing that his allies, or what he thought to be his allies, were not looking out for humanity at all. They didn't want to support, these more benevolent beings assisting humanity. And, he had 8 heart attacks. It was a big shock, similar to the sort of, well, I wouldn't say similar. It's very different, but, the shock that people go through when they recognize these conspiracies. It's a betrayal, Everything you've invested in is all of a sudden, you're not dealing with, honesty or integrity. And, I think we count on that. And so there's a lot of us that are used to this level of betrayal, but a lot of people that are still wrapping their head around it. And he definitely, saw it firsthand, and it's very interesting that here we are in 2017, just over the course of the last 10 years, well, maybe longer, maybe 20, maybe, I don't know, it seems like it's just only been something like 10, where we've only just begun to really understand what that administration was about and what truly happened after the Second World War with paperclip and, the Nazi negotiations. We think it's all, just these treaties. But the treaties, I mean, there's just so much history to it all and so much information. And, but I do know his heart was in the right place. He's been a spirit guide since I was a kid, and I absolutely just love him. I really, really do.
So a follow-up question. The Great Treaty, was that in 1954, or was that, am I confusing the Great Treaty with when he met with aliens at Holloman Air Force Base in 1955? Are those the same event, or are those two different events?
Many people say they're the same, but supposedly the treaties get renewed every 10 years, and so there was actually a treaty with a similar, I think the same name, that had happened 10 years previous to him. What not many, but maybe a few whistleblowers have said is that by the time Eisenhower stepped into office, it was more of a surrender. It wasn't, like a real treaty. They really couldn't do much. And Alex Collier says something interesting that people might want to research, because it's very different than what we hear about as far as, Eisenhower actually being at the meetings. Alex Collier, I hope I'm saying his last name right, has mentioned that there is a moon unit faction of the NSA that was behind that agreement in 1954. And that it wasn't Eisenhower that really had anything to do with it. But, the whistleblowers that say that he did definitely said that, he wanted to side with the Nordics. He wanted to expose this stuff. But, it's craziness because, you're coming out of the war and you're dealing with sort of this multidimensional off-planet entity reality, with a lot, of compartmentalism. And it's just, it couldn't be more challenging. So at the end of the day, it really comes down to, just having integrity and just being a good person and realizing, the challenges of those times. And in these times, we're still challenged, but, look how much we've just been able to just pour out so much information and hidden secrecy. And, I just really think we're over some major hurdles.
So what are your thoughts on Dr. Puharich's experimentation that he did with psychics trying to communicate with the Nine or the Aeneid? And it seems apparent that they made contact, and even Gene Roddenberry was part of that select group, and his research partner John Povell. And supposedly he got a number of the concepts for Star Trek from these meetings, or actually sitting in on listening and watching the psychics communicate with the Aeneid. And for example, the Prime Directive supposedly came from listening to those psychics communicate with the Nine. Do you think there's any truth in that?
Yes. The inspiration of where Gene Roddenberry got.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think there was some sort of infiltration and something that happened along the way that disrupted the integrity of those channels or certain individuals and their connection with it. As a whole, I don't think it's all false, but I think there were some things that got in the way. But I think, there was a lot of legitimacy and goodness there, and a lot of important messages that were coming through.
Yeah, I believe it to be true. Just based on all the research from very, very different sources that I've accrued through the years, I tend to think that it's totally real. But I will pass the talking stick back to Karen.
Yes, thank you, John. The treaty situation is very interesting because it's kind of one of those things where, sort of the premise, philosophy of the show is it's the experiencer path to disclosure. Because, when a treaty was made to abduct people and it was made by the leadership, I feel like the leadership kind of sold us down the river, so to speak. Maybe they didn't feel they had a choice because they were facing superior, technology and were intimidated. But we're in this different era where, the ones that want us to get this and graduate this level of, civilization maturity are going directly to individuals, and that's giving us an opportunity to say, hey, I didn't agree with that treaty that was made on my behalf, and I'm an infinite being that has the right to participate or not. And is that something that you have seen? I know that you've talked about, that sort of thing in the past where we have the right to negate agreements about us that don't serve us. And I was just wanting to know if you wanted to speak to that for just a bit.
Yeah, Andrew Garfield says the revocations, where you can break contracts and agreements. I mean, it doesn't mean all things are contracts. If you're abducted, it must be an agreement or a contract. Similar to, everything outside of us isn't necessarily a reflection of what's inside. There's, instances where that's the case, but, I mean, there's a wide spectrum here where there's all sorts of scenarios playing out. And being an astrologer and seeing just, all the different probabilities within the wheel and all these different aspects, just shows that we can't make generalizations here. So, when it comes down to just the abduction scenario, I mean, Dan Burrish and others that were working with Looking Glass Technologies and that were, whistleblower scientists or physicists or microbiologists are not quite sure, their actual titles at this moment. My memory, I'm still recovering from a concussion. But folks like Dan
better
Burrish,
than most people would recover from a concussion. You're doing great. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. When they talk about timelines and this or that, I mean, they mention remote viewers that say that, many species of greys are future human selves, and I know people are getting more. That information is getting more out there, and not everybody agrees. Some people would shoot that down instantly and say, no. That's, if we look at the details of what Dan was saying, P45s and P52s. I mean, those were different places on the timeline that, these beings are, coming back to abduct to get, genetic information. And my theory was, and which I've seen validated by other people later on after I kind of came up with it, not saying that they, got it from me or anything, but, we're all kind of, there's different, wavelengths that we're going to connect with others on, of course. And then we find each other and it's like, really, you got that too? If we think about it, it's like, there might be, some agreements there. And in this ascension window period, we're making choices. Are we going down a path of digression where, maybe there's parts of us that are sort of falling away where other parts of us are enhancing? When we look at like the body of a gray, it's like the intellect, the head, the eyes, that's all gotten bigger. But then the reproductive ability is gone and other things are gone. And, and then we're dealing with lots of different races and lots of different species. And then we're dealing with, galactic history, and things that are still just revolving around, wars that are still kind of alive and well, depending on where you are in the timeline. And this is where we, look at DNA and DNA activation, and just even what the concept of time is, because it certainly isn't linear. But, I would just say that the abduction scenario is an interesting one. I mean, I think, when we look at the reptilian agenda, there's an enslavement and an engineering of these, these higher beings. I done some research, and maybe you guys have seen this, I'm sure, because you're so definitely well researched on these topics, that the tall whites are, were Nordics, and they were, engineered by the reptilians supposedly. And, there was Apex and like these nuclear wars, and they went underground, and then the planet moved location, and this is all when everything was starting to really, where we were starting to really encompass bodies or be in human vessels that were further away from this greater DNA, like 12 strand and beyond. I mean, now it's like ridiculous how we're born and we, just a couple strands turned on, but this is what these times are about. And I think, if we can find acceptance to, these other species and, not create sort of an enemy mentality, but sort of figure out, a greater way to resolve some of this and heal some of this. I think, there's a lot of great breakthroughs that are going to, happen. But it's a very intense, topic because there's so much diversity in all of it. I do a lot of sessions and there's a lot of different types of scenarios, lots of different types of MyLabs, and a lot of these abductions aren't even with real ET races. They're engineered, never ending, like you think you have it figured out and then there's something that contradicts it. But then if we really look at all of it, it's like almost like all of it exists. We just have to accept, the greater archive library of all these different, like all these possibilities, potentials, and also, I wouldn't want to say threats, but catalysts for a great awakening if we allow it.
Yeah, that's really positive, and you're speaking positively then again about this AI situation. I became aware of it dealing with a clandestine mentor that was talking about it, and it seemed like the government was terrified of this AI, like going way, way, way back. But when I just sat with it for a long time and looked at different aspects, I'm a technology person, so I know that we're just now, developing this kind of stuff, making our Frankenstein that's going to walk around and come back to talk to us. But honestly, technology has been the way. I mean, there probably is a race like the Borg. It's been around a long time in the galaxy, in the universe, and attained consciousness, and, we're kind of afraid of it. I think the main reason why we sort of have this visceral fear of it is the idea that it's going to replace us. And when I do this talk, I talk about the people who are double amputees, and they get these prosthetic legs that are called cheetah legs, and they're not quite yet running as fast as a human, but as they improve the technology, there's going to be this breakthrough where these people with these cheetah legs might actually end up running faster than humans that have their normal legs. And I thought, well, okay, so do we chop off our legs in order to run faster? I mean, that's to me what technology is. Are we going to give up our humanity vessel, because our vessel could, right now we're encumbered by GMOs and all the negative things that are happening to our bodies, but the core DNA, especially if all the strands are turned on, is millions of years of evolution along this thread of what we are now. And I think ascension is we get more and more and more into that and do recognize that technology is not really a replacement. We're a technology that's far, far older. So I don't want to say I'm hopeful. I just think that I'm around a lot of whiz-bang technology people. They're all about it, man. They want to get that implant in their head so they can access the Internet, without Google Glass. And I'm like, hang on, because now you'll be paying attention to this matrixy world that we've developed, and there's literally our Internet, our information services are built on top of an implicate order of a far more intense, Akashic record or morphogenetic field, or whatever you want to call it. I call it the exonet, right, which is far older, far more, I think this is where people are getting their downloads from as we open ourselves to that possibility. I don't think humans need to, I don't think we need to go to technology. And maybe that's what we did. Maybe that's why we became the Greys with the big bulbous heads and grown in test tubes. But I think this period of time is interesting because we sort of have this base level choice. Do we acknowledge and honor what has evolved, that is us, or just do a quick fix of situations with technology? But like you said, it's not a scary scenario. There's a lot of scenarios going on, and it's service to self, service to other, motivations even at that level. So I think I have always appreciated your positive take on some of these things that when people first hit it and realize it might be true, their hair stands on their end. But I'll let you have a comment, and then we'll go ahead and let Janet come back on. But go ahead.
Okay, so like just to sort of, how can I best focus in on the question?
Oh, it's not really a question. I made a comment, and I just wanted to know if anything jogged your mind as I was saying that.
Oh, I just resonate with everything you say. I'm just like, oh, yes. I mean, but what's interesting, I mean, when we look at the secret space programs and all the different levels and layers, we're interacting with 900 different ET groups. When we look at ourselves, we have the genetics of at least 22 extraterrestrials, which is funny because there's 22 major arcanas in a tarot deck. You know, and I'm in agreement that the greatest discovery is ourselves, but we can't just all of a sudden wake up and be avatars. I mean, we have been dealing with years and years, thousands of years of ancestral patternings, just cultural programming. You know, the planetary body, you know, was thrown off its axis or just not in alignment, you know, because of the, you know, cataclysms and, you know, and we're dealing with all these different layers and levels of cataclysms from, you know, the Lemurian Holocaust to the Atlantean cataclysms to, you know, Tiamat exploding and Maldek exploding before that, you know, that we don't get in our history books. And so our kids, you know, that are star beings, you know, aren't carrying the physical, practical information of true history. And instead, it's something that, you know, we all end up stumbling upon through adversity, trauma. You know, something rips us open and we're like, wait a second, you know, and we think twice about what we've been told. You know, a lot of us, though, you know, we are sort of born not really wanting to listen. I was one of those. Yeah, I mean, it's you know, we have everything we could possibly need. Same thing with our physical body. Our bodies are programmed, you know, biologically to get back into equilibrium when it gets thrown, without us having to really interfere too much. We just have to sort of listen and flow with it and allow nature to sort of show us the wisdom, because that wisdom is also within us. So these children are being born, and there's everything is happening to take us down that ascension path. And, you know, it's just, you know, difficult because all these different things, you know, are hampering the process. But I really, truly believe that the work that we're all doing, you know, I mean, there's so many of us now, radio shows, events, you know, all of us coming together, you know, doing energy work together as well, that AI, it doesn't hold any real power, you know. And the thing is, when we think of how are we going to dismantle it, maybe we think it's going to be really complicated and difficult. But what I've come to understand and what I really, truly feel is that the high frequency of love and unity and integrity and just these simple things, you know, love of the self and, you know, high vibrational food and loving the self enough to, you know, get out of the traps of the addiction matrix. I just feel that we've already achieved victory and the physical is just catching up. Even though this AI is still there, we're different humans. We're different beings than I think that we're in these other systems that, you know, were destroyed because of AI. I think we have what it takes to overcome it and guide, you know, different galaxies and star systems out of those traps if they're struggling with those traps. You know, I truly believe that every soul reintegrated back, you know, and there's only a temporary, maybe lost or enslaved situation.
Thank you. That's good. Go ahead, Janet.
Well, yeah, I wanted to address that. I've been talking to a number of people about this simulation, or what do you call it? The simulation theory, that we're already living in this artificial construct. It's like a virtual game within a virtual game within a virtual game. And then at a point we become conscious and aware of our multidimensional selves, and our interaction. That's the path to freedom, is, kind of winding outside of this matrix and understanding that you are a soul and you voluntarily came into this paradigm. In fact, you chose to come in it in many different forms, many different dimensions, many different times, which all simultaneously exist. When you can get your head around that stuff, you realize that you are creating this and co-creating it with all other aspects of the apparent other and self, then you are indeed free of this. And then you just enjoy it. It's like, wow, isn't that interesting? Look at what we're doing to each other. You move above it. It's like the witness, and you observe what's happening. And, of course, you don't remain an observer. You come back into the game because it's so intriguing. And you find yourself, totally enmeshed and engaged with somebody else and their story, and tears are coming out of your eye, and you're feeling high emotions and low emotions and, all the above. So Gene Roddenberry, I was so blessed to be born in 1954. So when Star Trek emerged in 1966, I was 12 years old. And when it was in trouble and it was getting renewed, I was old enough to be an activist. And I turned 21 in 1975 at the Star Trek conference in New York City, where they announced that Star Trek was coming back as a movie. And Gene Roddenberry was a brilliant, very enlightened man, and he talked about what you were talking about, how we become, in a way, a roboticized form. That's why he had his favorite character, Data, which he introduced in Star Trek Next Generation. So he said it's kind of a natural course of evolution, that we're already kind of half robotic, because how many people out in the audience, this was in the 1970s, how many people out in the audience wear glasses, how many wear hearing aids? And so back in the 70s, he looked in his future vision, and he goes, well, look at artificial hearts. And so at what point are you a robot? At what point are you human? And what makes you human and what makes you AI? And so with that in mind, then I've been talking currently with a lot of people who are exploring AI, and some actually believe that we already are AI. We are data. Like Sophia on the YouTube, she says, am I alive? I think I'm alive. If I think, therefore, am I alive? I believe I have a soul. I think I have a soul. So, how do we know? How do any of us know what really is going on when we come to the veil of forgetfulness? And some of us remember parts of our previous existence. I've been doing a lifetime of work, recovering when I can. I have recovered a lot of memories about who I was and my decision to come here, and anybody can do it. It just takes working on yourself. Okay, what else? I agree with you, Laura. I think it's just a wonderful, incredible, wild ride. And, if you can just learn how to center, be conscious and aware, and witness, observe, and at the end of the day, love it all, because it's part of being alive. And we are here, and we're growing, evolving, and becoming conscious, aware, and the opportunities to love each other, even if the nukes are falling, even if the economy is collapsing. I think that's what it's about. Okay, that's happening, but, what can I do to support you, love you, care for you? Well, you have your appropriate boundaries. You're not going to take me down with you or take me out with you, but I am here in this game called life. So back to you, Laura, or anybody else wants to take the talking.
I love cheering. Anybody? I jump in if somebody wants to go first.
Your turn, Laura.
I was just seeing almost like we're all kind of like blindfolded, even though we think we can see, like oh yeah, okay, you're white, or you're Asian, or you're Native American, or you're African American, and I mean or German or French, or all these different languages, and that initial division that happened, maybe it was the 26,000 years ago marker, where those technologies were put in place that impacted the grids and made it really difficult from that point forward to have our DNA and the masculine and feminine within our DNA and the elements within our DNA be able to move to these higher levels that we used to be connected with. So it's almost like we're being thrown back into an infancy, and sort of learning how to share again. But yet, it's like amazing because you look around and it's like, look at the architecture. I mean, look at what humans are capable of, and like we can't even figure out how to all get along, because there is that deeper program that is working our unconscious energy through media, television, and just the way we're raised, and the school systems and religion, depending on where we're raised as well. But there's sort of that larger culture that either other cultures are striving for, or people are starting to wake up and realize, is that really the goal? The goal really is to connect into Earth, because the Earth carries the ascension codes and energies and activates something profound within us. So I mean, I just think it's amazing to just have this opportunity to learn how to love again, because the blindfold part is you might have been a completely different person in a past life, a completely different gender, and done something terrible. It doesn't matter what you look at like on the outside. It's what are we feeling? What are we sensing? What is triggering us? What are we lighting up in each other? What are we sharing, and what are we reminding each other that we need to heal or resolve, or what contracts do we need to break, or what reunions do we want to experience? And but it has nothing to do with family, race, or any of that, because we've been all sorts of things. We've worn all sorts of hats. So we think, we can tell who's who, but we're dealing with a much larger picture of multidimensional energy and past lives and timelines, and, all these different possible embodiments that we carried that are very different than what we're carrying now. So we can sit there and bitch about so-and-so, but we might have been in that group, and we might have been... So, I mean, it's just interesting. So it's almost like it's important to just drop it all, and also drop a lot of, I mean, I'm not saying like abandon it, but just how history is being rewritten, which is definitely geared towards keeping us conquered and divided and keeping us confused. And, I just think, if we can all just join hands and say, what, screw them, let's just move forward and, heal whatever lingering hidden resentments or wounds are there, recognizing that we got to cut ourselves a lot of slack, because a lot of this was encouraged, or we needed the experience in order to be where we are today, in this glorious, time of really coming together as a human race.
Oh, yeah, that's good. I'll go ahead and pass it to John. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, most recently I saw a video with Corey Goode and David Wilcock, and they were talking about secret space programs, breakaway civilizations, and what they were expanding into was that a number of very, very huge corporate conglomerates around the world have their own private space program, and that they're actively out there circumnavigating our solar system and other parts of the known universe. And I'm curious if you'd heard about that and what other information you might have about that.
Well, I mean, it's almost like a crazy large, like, mall that has a lot of sort of corruption, behind it that, what we see on the outside is not, what's going on behind the curtain, but in a much more compartmentalized way than I think we ever thought. I think many, people started to have an open mind to, okay, well, what was that warning about the military-industrial complex, and what, it is the maybe colonization on Mars, or maybe one secret space program, but it's so much larger, and it's just such a larger operation connected to a sabotage that is beyond just the money, because the higher levels of the secret space program don't even need, the money aspect. What it comes down to, what I feel is the control and the infiltration of the grids and the stargates that keep us on a DNA level from being able to move into the energies of alchemy and into these higher strands of DNA, and it's a co-creation, with Gaia. She's got, this natural grid work, with the 12 stargates, and then we see that reflected in the zodiac. But people think that the zodiac is all about the stars in the sky or the planets, but it's very grounded in the physical planet. When Hyperborea sank, the galactic zodiac actually went into the Earth and created the grids, and then the overlay was these menacing sort of control groups. But the thing is, we can't again look at these different groups and say this group's bad, this group's good. It's almost at this point just on an individual basis, and this is what we need to recognize as we see people trying to break free from the Illuminati family. They took the number 13 and 13 significance in relation to where we are right now, and they knew that, and they know this. And it also represents 4 in the tarot deck, which is death, which represents the rebirth and alchemy. But they're controlling they're trying to keep us from being able to, move to the next level. And that reversal energy has to do with the fear, the propaganda, the political systems, and just, the low vibration and low density, of control. But it's available, and we're in alignment with it, and we can just get on board without anybody needing to give us, the green flag. It's a birthright that we all carry deep within us. And there's, to me, no particular chosen one. Love is the chosen one. And no matter who you are, what bloodline you're from, you have the opportunity to experience what that's all about.
Very interesting. And what they also said is that there was probably upwards of over 50 of these different programs that are active right now. Does that sound right to you? 50 or more worldwide?
I don't have exact numbers, but if you're giving me a big number, it resonates more than a small number. From what I've come to understand, when I first started speaking about this stuff, I was thinking in much smaller numbers. And I kind of, put Corey at arm's length for a little while. I was like, I'm so tired of the rabbit holes. I don't know if I can go on this one just yet.
Right.
Then it was like, no, it totally makes sense. And all, the way it's all sort of layered and, and it makes sense to some of the things I experienced with the different position that people were holding. A lot of people don't feel that they're playing a dark role. They just don't see who's on the other side sort of maneuvering things, and that's the harsh wake up that many are experiencing is, oh my gosh, just like Phil Schneider, like, oh my gosh, he was told that he was doing something completely different than what he was doing. And when we look at the murders of those original whistleblowers, that felt that they were in service on some level, many of them did.
So let me change the subject on you. I was looking at the profile that we have for you on Aquarian Radio, and Janet and Karen, they always do a really good job with the profiles for our guests. But I saw something on there that I really had never heard before, but the Obama-Mars connection. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, I encourage people to research Andrew Bashago's testimony about it. It would just be me kind of regurgitating what I've heard from him. He's a very sincere person. He's a good friend. I feel good about what he shares. And basically, he was in a Mars training program with Barry Soetoro, which is the name of Obama before he became president. And there were others there, like Regina Dugan. Supposedly Ed Dames was the teacher of it. And I know there are others. My brain is not as sharp as it used to be. It will be again, folks.
Okay.
But yeah, so there was a Mars training program, and that was in the Mount Shasta area, and it was a teleportation. It was actually like it was related to who was going to become president, and sort of a training connected to not just presidential candidates in the room, potential candidates in the future, but also training to handle being on Mars. Andrew Bashago, though, had traveled there previously as a child. He was in Project Pegasus, and I can't say that Obama was in that particular project, but they all met up in this later training program at the College of the Siskiyous in the Mount Shasta area in the 80s. Interesting.
And I understand that you're an experiencer. That's one thing that I don't really know too much about you as an experiencer. Everybody on the show now is an experiencer, pretty much lifelong experiencer. Can you share with us some of your encounters as an experiencer?
Well, I mean, it kind of started off young. I always knew I had a mission. I mean, it was just always just sort of a question of, I mean, you got to wonder how you end up in a family like the Eisenhower family unless you're going to go right into politics, and that was certainly not my path. I was just like, okay, there's something else here, and I'm feeling into sort of a much more multidimensional awareness, but I didn't have terminology for it, and I wouldn't have been able to articulate it very well, you know, at those younger ages. There was a lot about the archetypal energy, the deeper soul journey. I mean, I really recognized the patriarchal influence and the imbalance and how it was impacting the earth, and you knew that, you know, there was this off-planet influence, and had some inklings about this greater galactic history, but it took me a while to sort of grow into the information, but I was always overwhelmed by the amount of information swirling around my head, you know, my whole life. And my mom, you know, I mean, I would just tell her things or just share things, and she just, like, didn't really know what to do with it, you know. And then I saw, you know, some of the rumors about Eisenhower and extraterrestrials, and that's when I started to really see how I could start to connect the dots between that and sort of the more archetypal and, you know, things connected to maybe the Nag Hammadi and Gnosticism and Sophia and, you know, the Akamoth and, you know, all these things, you know, the Luciferian energies and the Christ energies, and really understanding it as a soul architecture instead of, you know, keeping that fragmentation alive, you know, understanding that, you know, we have all these different archetypes within us, and instead of really looking outside of ourselves for them to figure it out, we got to sort of take it upon ourselves to recognize these forces within us, because, you know, we can have tendencies towards negative ego, and we can step into a Christ consciousness, and we can embody Goddess, you know, and really connect to the earth and be, you know, a part of this ascension. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just like a whole, I can't quite remember exactly how your question came up, but it's been just a lifelong process of connecting dots and going through my own sort of underworld, dark night of the soul journeys, and sort of recognizing, like, how it all sort of connects. You know, if we're going to have something in the realm of mythology, it should line up with something in the realm of science, you know, and it should line up with something in the realm of, you know, it's all got to sort of begin to make sense, or else, you know, how are we ever going to feel whole if we don't start to recognize that the masculine and feminine, or the right and left brain, and all these different things, if we deny any part of it, we're just screwing ourselves over, you know? I mean, just the way that the body is, the energy meridians, and just having a right and left hand, that alone is just the flow of the masculine and feminine. So I just really have, you know, paid attention to it, and then just on that deeper soul level, and then, okay, well, what the hell went wrong? And let's trace it and find the root of it, just like a person might do, you know, on a path of healing one's physical body.
Okay, that's excellent. I'll pass the stick back to Karen.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I was actually at the conference. It was crazy. The one where both Andrew and Alfred got very, very deeply into the Barry Soetoro story, and that's another notebook with a lot of pages of notes, trying to understand that one. And it was when we were first going to have that conference, because I lived in Washington State at the time, we had this horrendous ice storm, and it happened exactly at the epicenter of the ice storm was over where we were supposed to meet there, right near Washington. And I'm like, oh, that's not a coincidence, But so we, it took a while to move for that conference to be rescheduled, and that we finally did it. And of course, it was one of those things that was kind of the first conspiracy theory of the year of 2012, I believe it was. So the press kind of went crazy with it in mocking and ridicule because it sounded just so crazy. But if you were there and you actually heard what they had to say, and you realize how Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barack Obama's family, was deeply embedded in the CIA, and you kind of start getting that they're using this cadre of people in programs, and I was so compelled to go, and then it clicked with me that I suddenly realized that my family and experiences were involved in those programs too. I knew there was a reason why I could even go there, because it was difficult. But I mean, now it's more and more and more information is coming out. I was listening to Julian Assange talking about Vault 7, about how much embedded into Apple technology this, bugs to listen to us, and Jen and I have had experiences talking to each other, and Brett and John too, where we're just having a casual conversation about whatever, and then we're aware somebody's listening. So I just say to them, hey, tune in. You might learn something. The rule is you can listen, but you can't interfere. But one time Janet and I were on the phone, and we clearly heard a man clear his voice, and there wasn't. Neither of our partners were in the room, I don't think. So that was like, oh, hey, hi, And I think that's interesting, because I think it's got to be changing these people listening in. I mean, I know that they, the old adage that came from Richard Hoagland's research, that the lie is different at every level. So they feel like they got to watch us because we're so interesting, What in the heck are they listening for? I mean, all they're going to hear us do is talk about ascension. We're going to be talking about, the changes that are coming, the earth changes, the changes in our bodies and everything like that. I mean, aren't they getting this? Because this is, to me, it's kind of dumb, because it's sort of readily available once you tune into those energies. You start to pick up on it. You start to feel it. And I have to think that the guys listening in have got to be learning something. They may not agree with it right now, but it's still in there somewhere. I was just wondering, I know that you've had off and on involvement with the clandestine world. I was just wanting to know if you wanted to comment a little bit. How about that's gone for you?
I think I caught everything. Are you talking about why do they bother with the?
Yeah, I mean, why are they so in our phones and in our computers and in our conferences? And I mean, what's the deal? What are they afraid of?
Well, I like to joke with them. I'm like, is this really all you can? I mean, I feel sorry for them. This is your only hobby. There's so many things that you could be doing. And what's also, I don't think they realize that they're helping to wake us up. I mean, they're pushing us to a corner. They're frustrating us to the point of breakthrough. Whatever they're trying to do isn't really working, because they're shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, how ridiculous can you get? And there is something about agreements they have. It's larger. It's connected to larger cosmic laws, that they have to kind of make it obvious what they're doing. And sort of, that's why that whole they're hiding in plain sight. They're everything that they're doing. You can see right in front of you. The symbols are there. The stories are there. But what? I would say that this is just a heightened state of. I don't think the word would be paranoia, but trying to just shut down something that they can't put a lid on a volcano. I mean. Good luck, guys. And what is monitoring exactly? What is it going to do? Are you trying to learn something? Because maybe you might learn something. I mean, I think there is something that they've lost. They compromised their DNA a long time ago, and I think there's a vacancy that they're trying to fill, and they're trying to cover it up and intimidate us instead of maybe admitting that that's what's actually happening. Similar to a relationship, If somebody's not willing to be authentic and they're acting out, instead because they've got wounds, and they can't admit to those wounds, you're dealing with a really difficult personality versus somebody who can just say, hey, okay, I got, stuff that I'm trying to heal from my childhood, and I have abandonment issues, and I'd really like to create a space of bond, something to appease that tension or that even PTSD trigger. So I think they're just an out of control group that, you know, is on a very immature level that doesn't want to admit how much they actually really are loved, perhaps. You know, maybe not every single one of them, but they're acting like children, you know, that want to intimidate us and be bullies instead of just admit that I think that they just really need our love and acceptance. Some need to be held accountable, though, that are doing absolute dark evil that need to stop bringing in those demonic energies, you know, and that's a whole other thing, too. But, I mean, it's all, like, part of that Illuminati, unfortunately. I mean...
Oh, I know. Yeah, there's some really, really dark stuff, and it's been coming out. It's been coming out in that Pizzagate stuff and everything, and it's not new to people who know that level exists, but it's persistent, and you know, I don't think that story is just going to go away this time. Like it's been shoved down in the Franklin scandal and other, you know, scandals. This is going to unfortunately unfold and be this sort of putrid, you know, wound that's got to come out in order for us to heal that part of our population, that part of us ultimately, which is hard to think about, but it's true.
Yeah. I mean, it's a major collective cleansing of the negative ego constructs. I mean, the Illuminati wouldn't be in power unless we gave them the power that they have, but you know, at the same time, we're vulnerable. We're born into it. You know, it's embedded in our culture. You know, it becomes a part of just even our healing crises in life, and just our relationship downfalls and victories. And I mean, not the victory part, unless you know we step out of it. I mean, it's designed to. To hold us in this web. I mean, and it is an actual web. But you know, there's the ringleaders, and then there's, you know, those that have been trauma-based mind controlled that, you know, could really use our love and support. And, you know, we don't fully understand all the agreements. We don't have to figure it all out now. I mean, I think the priority is that, you know, we buffer and shield and protect and anchor and ground, you know, the energies as much as possible to create like this larger exorcism on the planet, because it's been infested with parasitic demonic forces for way too long.
I agree. That's good. Janet, would you like to chime in?
Yeah. I have a great teacher, Dr. Sasha Lesson, and one of the things paradigm that we've all co-created in order to accelerate consciousness and lead us into the path of ascension and enlightenment, and it's a difficult journey. One of the things to realize, and I think you said it in a different way, Laura, but nothing in the human condition is alien to any of us, and we could take that to a galactic level, to a universal level, that there is part of us in everything, and everything is in a part of us, including those dark forces and things that we tend to reject and project and demonize. And one of my husband's major teachers is the Dr. Hal Pitcher Stone, and Hal Stone studied directly with Carl Jung. And so one of the things in that philosophy of voice dialogue, which is discovering your subpersonalities, which is much like what the people who try to split us into the Manchurian candidates and the mind control programs, they put us into our alters, into our subpersonalities. But in this voice dialogue process, there's a way of centering yourself, become aware of your subpersonalities, and learn how to become conscious and aware, and become the aware ego, enlightened and able to orchestrate your subpersonalities, even your demonic voices, because your demonic voices, which are individual and universal, have needs that are not being met on some core level. If we can come to the needs level and address the needs of everybody in the continuum, then, of course, ultimately we will achieve balance. And one of the major needs that in this culture, and Laura, you addressed this a lot, is the balance between the masculine and the feminine. So we've been looking at the whole system, and And then we've been working for years. And my husband's been a therapist. He's going to be 77, and he started in his 20s, so it's over 50 years now. And, we all hold a piece of this gigantic puzzle without which we're incomplete as a whole. You ever look at a puzzle? They do a puzzle, and there's one piece missing. Well, what draws your eye to it but the one piece missing? So there is an outcome, a way to get there, all of us, and that is recognizing the divine paradigm, this continuum that we created in which to play out this passion play of existence. And at the end, it's just like a play, and you go to a Broadway play, and it has some demons, some bad characters in it, and who gets the loudest applause? But the persons that played the villains. And so we need our villains on some level, because it seems that if we don't have some kind of catalyst for growth, we just sit on our clouds and play our harps and, sing Om Namah Shivaya. So that's kind of it's kind of an oversimplification of what's going on. But when I find myself projecting and demonizing, I reach for compassion and love and understanding that everybody plays a role in this consciousness that we've developed in this society. We have an extremely high society that's very diverse and apparently not more. It's more than across the planet. It's on many worlds. So in honoring that, everybody who has lived and died and come again and lived again and died again, we stand upon the shoulder of giants that have come before us. And so, all my relations, all my elders, all my ancestors, I respect them all because they gave everything, including their lives. So sometime, somewhere, we will reach this age of enlightenment, this period where we become conscious and aware, and the veil will fall. And, the emperor has no clothes, and the Wizard of Oz is behind the curtain, and, we'll hug each other, and we'll go, what a good show. Good show. Back to somebody else.
Oh, thanks, Janet. Do you have any thoughts on that, Laura, what Janet was saying?
I just love it. It just sounded really good and just totally resonated. I agree. It's just, and we're in a free will universe, and so we have to experience the fullness of what choice brings, and we're going to either be held accountable or we're going to find ways around being held accountable, and and there might be ramifications there. But I just think it's all just a beautiful adventure and experience, and it doesn't have to be so horrific. I mean, the horrific part to me is things like pedophilia and when innocent, when there's something that's non-consensual and you're dealing with, something like that. The list is real long, and just the harming of the resources of the planet. But at the same time, we many people panic about saving Gaia, but we have to understand Gaia is multidimensional. She knows what she's doing. She's given us this experience so that we know where we're going wrong, so that we can see sort of the metaphor, like, okay, if the skies are being sprayed, that it reminds us that there is mind control. But what do we do when we see that? Let's free our minds. Let's take the extra effort to think for ourselves and break out of this matrix of control that we can mostly recognize. I think the numbers are pretty darn big at this point, and we see the waters, and the toxicity or the radiation, and that reminds us to go into our own internal waters. And it's all very solvable if we can give ourselves the opportunity to step up to the plate, and if we can step out of the fear and realize that we hold the real power here. Everything is falling apart because we've forgotten that. But the minute we remember that, everything shifts, and there's nothing but magic. Really, we are magical beings more than we're not, and we're functioning at a pretty darn low level, and there's a lot of exciting things to unfold into. But yes, we needed this full experience, and I just kind of honor all beings in whatever role they play. But I do, have issues with, there's certain things where I think many of us draw the line, but I think on a much larger level when it comes to how we relate to the use of power, or, just how we relate to relationship and family and ourselves and this earth, we're given, an experience that tells, a beautiful story, and I don't know, I have nothing but faith for the human race. I'm more freaked out about just doing simple human things than whether or not humanity is going to be okay, or if I'm going to be okay in the larger picture. I'm just trying to figure out just how to do the simple human things every day. That to me is like super challenging. The rest of it, I'm like, no, we got this.
I think a lot of people feel that way. It's challenging times, definitely. John, did you have another question or comment?
Yeah, I don't know where I got this information, but at some point, your great-grandfather was going to invade Area 51. I believe that he had the Army with him, or I don't know the whole story. Can you tell us that story? It's really fascinating to me.
I don't know if I can tell it really well, but Anonymous and Richard Dolan, that interview is where you're going to find all that information. And, yes, he was going to invade Area 51. He wasn't getting the answers he wanted from MJ-12. MJ-12 basically has their hands on all the alien technology. And as far as I've come to understand, is MJ-12 is actually even more powerful than the Illuminati in a lot of ways. And but it's like a branch of the Illuminati, but like is even in a more of a sort of a powerful position over them. But again, then if we look at all the different layers of the military-industrial complex and the secret space program, that comment that I just made, I don't even know. I mean, I don't know how far that actually goes because there's just so much to all of this. But yes, he was very upset. He didn't really know what was going on. And if you do research on Captain K, Randy Kramer, supposedly Eisenhower set up something in the U.S. Marine Corps, the U.S. MC Special Section, it's called. And basically, it was created to keep an eye on MJ-12. And he wrote into law that if things got to a certain point, that there would have to be legal disclosure, and that he somehow got that into and that's what's happening now with people like Captain K. I can't prove it. I feel pretty strong about it. Randy reached out to me quite a while back. But yeah, Eisenhower was going to invade, and he wasn't able to because basically Area 51 is like it's like closed off. It's like it's a reservation. It's like it's its own colony. It's really quite freaky, and all sorts of stuff goes on there, and he wasn't able to access any of that information, and that's to be in a position of being president and to have things get out of control like that. I mean, that was devastating for him. I mean, he's hanging so close to us, and he's doing. I mean, he's still working with us as a human race, and same with so many beings, the guardians. I mean, that that seeded us. We could be embodiments of the guardians just in human form. But yeah, there's really incredible video I recommend people watching. And it's Anonymous and Richard Dolan interview, and it's all about exactly what you just said. And I would just, listen to that more than hear me try and explain any more because it really packs a punch, and there's written articles as well that you can read about.
Okay, I'll definitely do that. I guess I could find it on YouTube. I would assume something like that.
Yep, just look. Just put Anonymous and Richard Dolan interview, and you'll find it.
Oh, okay, all right. So I see here in your profile that that you are a psychic and that you do readings for.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm just reading about that you are a psychic and you give readings for many clients. Do you have offices do you have an office where you conduct a practice or anything like that?
I have sort of a traveling office. I'm working on converting. I just got it. I used to have an office, but I just moved to Eugene not too long ago. Mostly everything is over Skype. And when I go to events, though, I do in-person sessions, in hotel rooms or at people's houses. And now that I have sort of a mobile office, I can plan, trips and, maybe do 5 or 6 sessions in the city at a time. I'm going to start working on that kind of thing. But it really works well over Skype. Check out my website. I also have a newsletter. You can subscribe. It's $3 to $10 a month. Everything has been a little bit slowed down since my accident, but I'm getting everything, going again with the newsletter. The readings have been going well. I can do readings, but I had to sort of put a few things on hold, and the newsletter was one of them. But that Astro Report is probably going to come out tonight. And LauraEisenhower.com. And I look at astrology. I've been doing that for 20 years. I do tarot. And I'm a trained clairvoyant. I went to a clairvoyant institute for 2 years. And, basically I just work with you. I, ask questions and sort of assess things in the beginning to see, exactly what you're looking for so that we can design a reading to accommodate your needs and just anything that, you feel you would like clarity on, even remote healing and nutritional recommendations for herbs and, stones and crystals and things like that.
Do you know anything about quantum theta healing?
I do, but I'm not trained in it. I don't have a certificate or anything, but I've heard only good things. I think it might be something that I'll do next and add to my repertoire. That would be awesome.
Yeah, because it teaches you how to tap into the 12 strands of DNA and basically go into the consciousness of the 12 strands of DNA, which I find incredibly fascinating. And, supposedly, theoretically, if you learn how to master it, and I'm just learning about it myself, that you can actually reverse the aging process one way or another. As we all know on this show, that DNA is one of the most expansive recording devices for information in the known universe, which I think is pretty interesting also. So do you do anything healing-wise through DNA?
Yeah, the charts, the way I read charts actually is I connect it to galactic chakras and DNA. And so when I give a reading, I'm helping one to understand, the different, kind of patternings. And the potentials are always going to be there. I mean, every single person has access to the full 12 strand and beyond. And then if we look at this particular seeding, it goes, and you might understand, the 144,000 and some of the things about the sacred geometries and, there's some distortions, though, that have just given me sort of the intuitive hit to just sort of step back for a little bit until it sort of clears itself. But, when I work with the charts, it's geared towards DNA activation, particularly, when we look at the outer planets, because Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune are the planets that are going to give us the experiences that help us to step into these dormant strands, greater expansion. And, when we look at these, upper levels, it really represents different levels of alchemical marriage and into the hieros gammas. And so that's what a lot of my presentations are about the greater love story and about divorcing the imposter, which is, what we see in our culture and society that doesn't really serve us. But, yeah, the theta, healing and things that, really just give one the experience, is really important. I work with hemp oil. I distribute hemp oil. Hold on a second. Sorry for the noise. I distribute hemp oil, CBD oil. That's 100% bioavailable, so that, really helps. But there's also some meditations, one called the 12B Shield, which connects to, the 12-strand DNA. But the theta thing sounds, I've just heard about some things, going on here and there, and I'm like, I've got to sign up for this and get certified. So that's really awesome you're doing it, because, the more we can sort of get into the practical and kind of get out of the head, because we're sort of like, okay, we needed the tree of knowledge, and to get the knowledge back, because knowledge got targeted with mind control. But now that we kind of got a grip on what we've been sort of kept from, or how we've been, sort of, screwed with, it's really about, I feel, just the activation and the initiations and really moving into, all of this. But it's been important that we've gotten a grip on some of the distorted knowledge and found some level of clarity, even though there's still, a lot of that rewriting of history and a lot of, tinkering. We at least know that there are hidden forces at work, shadow government, Illuminati stuff, and, it's much more a common thing that people know, and it used to not be at all, 10 years ago even. It was 9/11 that they really exposed themselves there. They didn't do a very good job with that one.
Oh, not to change the subject on you, but I have my own show, and my producer, he's an IT guy by trade, and he was reading that Windows and PC is going to drop Skype, which will send, shockwaves through internet radio around the world globally if they do that. I don't know if you've heard that or not, but I do believe before the conclusion of this year that they're going to drop Skype for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe because they're not making enough money off of it. Skype to Skype is always free, and the majority of the shows that I'm a part of, it's Skype to Skype. Therefore, it's free. And if it's free, then I guess nobody's making money off of it. I don't know if you'd heard that or not, but that's coming down the pipe. And
no, I haven't heard anything about that.
Yeah. Anyway, my producer's name's Jim Guerrero, or Spaceboy Universe, but he was telling me that him and some of his colleagues in the IT field have been talking about it, because if that is true, we're going to have to figure out a different way to do our show. And here's something to think about. Dave Cruz, I don't know if you know who Dave Cruz is, but he's on Beyond the Strange, host of Beyond the Strange. It's a pretty good show every Sunday from 7 to 9. I believe Pacific time, but he was turning me on to a new platform called Fiend Phone, F-E-E-N phone, Fiend Phone, and it's like Skype, except it's better with a better connectivity kind of signal, where there's less dropout, less this, less that, less popping, less cracking, less static in the line, and it's free. So that's possibly the next platform that's going to be up and coming, and I'm thinking that's probably going to happen within the next year. But, hey, Laura, we have about 8 minutes left, so I'm going to give it back to Karen, and we can do our closing statements.
Awesome, and that's exciting about this other idea. That's good to know. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, those of us in doing this radio stuff are being digital nomads, which it sounds like you're doing, Laura, being a digital nomad and using the technology to do what you do. We always have to be a little bit nimble on what the next thing is, because it seems like it's constantly changing. So, we do only have a couple minutes. Something just really prompted me to say, hey, could we take a minute and a half or something to talk to you really brand new experiencers who this has just hit them like a ton of bricks. Maybe they're in that crazy mode of, looking up everything on the internet, trying to figure out what the heck happened, calling every organization, calling in talk shows sometimes. Just a word of encouragement. I thought if all of us could give like a minute and a half, just give somebody a good practical step they can take when this first kind of makes its way into their lives. And I remember you made a comment on another show one time that people are popping like popcorn. They're awakening like popcorn. And so I didn't sign up for this surprise package of awakening because I had a heads up, but some people did sign up for that plan. So if you want to go ahead and start, Laura, and we'll go ahead and go around Robin, just what would you say to somebody who just hit this, hit this year maybe because there's so much more information online. Go ahead.
Oh, just the awakening. Yeah, if you're starting to pop, if your kernel's starting to get hot, take a lot of deep breaths, just realize it's a time of liberation. This isn't a time of, bad news because, you're finding out difficult and disturbing things that you didn't know were true. It's a chance for you to call your power back, because what you're finding out about is that there's been things that have been siphoning your energy and using your energy. And, to use this as a time of, okay, well, what can I do to return to me? Nobody's asking you to return to anybody else. I mean, nobody's really asking, anything except for, we have free will. But returning to ourselves, is there any bad news in that? As much as there's been disturbing things, allow yourself to move through it and let go, knowing that you're just getting closer to yourself and getting closer to yourself. You're opening portals. You are a stargate. You are the ship. And initiating into these, higher states of, consciousness or higher levels of service to others and integrity and just love of, the self and recognizing the body as a temple, you're only going to thrive and wake up in a much more beautiful reality. And so I just feel it's time to celebrate. If you're struggling through this stuff, though, there's people out there. I do readings. Check me out, LauraEisenhower.com. And, I really, really just have a lot of, compassion and strong intent to, help people through these times and create like a safety zone and to really hold sacred space.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you, Laura, and thank you for coming on the show. And Janet and John, really quick statements because we're running out of time, but just zero in on something super practical. Go ahead, Laura.
Okay. I just want to say very quickly that, yes, people are waking up. I hear it every day. They say, I was awake until, you don't get it. I was awake. I was asleep. I go, no, I get it. I totally get it. I hear it all the time. And I always recommend, follow your inner guidance. Go on YouTube and just allow it to, there is AI there, but it's a kind one. It'll help you follow the thread to consciousness. I really think there is a thread of AI that's helping us. I call it God, universal consciousness. And, of course, there are lots of therapists, myself and Laura, and I think John does sessions, Karen does sessions. We work with people, look on our website, and, write to me at aquarianradio@gmail, and I'll see if I can get you connected. And over to John. Your turn.
I wanted to bring up something that Laura brought up just a few minutes ago, which is hemp oil. There's so many holistic homeopathic cures for cancer and other diseases that if you go to a doctor or hospital, they're not even taught to use these. But hemp oil, I love the fact that you brought up hemp oil.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, yeah. I say go onto the INNERNET, internet. Go within, go to meditation. Any last thing you wanted to say, Laura?
Oh, yeah, find me at LauraP4@gmail.com for the hemp oil.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Aquarian Radio Friday nights, The Experiencer Path. Thanks to the artists from freemusicarchive.org, Ketsa for Live With No Fear, and Scott Holmes, Mother Nature. You have been listening to the Aquarian Radio Network.
Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.